This is the Pal Talk News Network.
The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube and on Blip TV and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you're encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. No retribution. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show. Yesterday I wasn't here. Left the keys to the show in the capable hands of Boaz Frankel. I was in Washington, D.C., speaking to a class, a journalism class, at George Washington University. We actually held the class at the Newseum, at the 9/11 display, and I spoke about my experiences with CNN Radio on September the 11th, 2001 with the students there. And I actually wrote about yesterday's experience at GaryBaumgarten.com. I encourage you to take a look at that and offer me your comments on that. There's also a story there entitled Poll, Americans Down on Politics. We're going to talk about that during the second portion of the show, but I'm very pleased to have as my guest during this first segment Floyd Brown. He is the editor of the website exposeobama.com, and he blogs at impeachobamacampaign.com. He believes that the president is a danger to the American way of life. Many people will recall that Floyd Brown was the architect of the Willie Horton ad that sunk the Dukakis presidential campaign. Floyd Brown, welcome to News Talk Online on the Pal Talk News Network.
Hey, Gary, it's great to be with you, and this is a neat technology that you pioneered, and it's great to be participating in it.
Well, I wish I pioneered it. I'm just exploiting it. Came over here from CNN.
Well,
it's
you're still a pioneer at this stage.
But I'll tell you what, Floyd, it's interesting because I came over here from CNN after doing a story on this great program, Pal Talk, and I was so blown away by it. Because you know and you'll see this in just a moment. What makes it so great is that people from all points of view, from all points of the earth where there's internet access, join in. So it's a very dynamic discourse that we have here. Somebody's writing in our virtual auditorium here on paltalk.com, Floyd Brown, that Barack Obama is a danger to the United States of America. Why do people like that individual and you have that belief?
Well, I believe that in the last election campaign, the largest single bait-and-switch operation in the history of the United States of America was run. We were told that Barack Obama was a mainstream, moderate, Democratic politician. In fact, I remember so distinctly in the debate when he said, when I have economic questions, I'm going to turn to Warren Buffett to help me answer those questions. And once he was in office, he operated completely differently than most of us believed he would operate, given the way he campaigned and given his rhetoric and given what he had said. And so there's a lot of people that are really disconcerted. What are the things that he did? Well, one of the first things he did was nationalize a number of major banks. He nationalized the largest life insurance company in the country. He then turned around and effectively nationalized and then gave to the United Auto Workers most of the auto industry. And he has kind of been marching through various institutions and dramatically changing the way they operate and leaving the traditional tried and true American way of doing things, and I think it makes me and a lot of other Americans extremely uncomfortable.
Well, your characterization is nationalizing the banks and the insurance companies. That bailout of the banks and the insurance companies actually began during the administration of George W. Bush, a Republican.
But it was transformed under Tim Geithner and Barack Obama to become the U.S. government being the major shareholder of these banks. If you'll remember, back during the Bush administration, the whole intent of the program was to get, quote, bad assets off the books of these banks. It was to buy the assets. And Barack Obama totally changed that. Instead of buying the assets were never moved off of the balance sheets of those banks. Instead, he bought the banks, or basically took them over in friendly takeovers, and became the largest single shareholder to Bank of America, to Citibank, and became a major shareholder in a number of other major banks. And the significance of this is, as the shareholder of, and as the holder of first preferred shares and then common shares, is that he had a role in the governance of these various corporations that was much greater than he would have been if he had been involved in an arm's length transaction where he had bought, mortgage-backed securities or some other bad asset off of these banks. So, it began under George Bush. I personally didn't support it under George Bush, but under Barack Obama, it became a totally different program.
Floyd Brown, it's interesting. As I listen to conservatives bemoan the fact that they expected one thing and got another from President Obama, and they use terms like socialist, Marxist, communist, etc. I also hear from people on the far left, people who identify themselves as progressives, also saying they didn't get what they expected when they voted for Barack Obama, but they don't see him as a kindred spirit. They see him as a Republican in Democratic clothing. They note that he supports offshore drilling.
I find that just shocking because, basically the standard definitions of Marxism and socialism have to do with ownership of the means of production, okay? And anyone who has a classic understanding of these concepts must agree that, when you take over the ownership and own the means of production, then you are, in fact, that's the classic definition of socialism. So, maybe some people aren't really informed as to what socialism is, but at its core, it's an economic system. It's not a political system. That's why you can have socialists that are, dictators like Mao, and you can have other socialists that are people like Francois Mitterrand, who was the socialist president of France during the 1980s. But it's socialism.